Okay, in this video I'll be talking about how to assemble the flow cell for the vanadium redox flow battery with the interdigitated flow field. So to start, I'm going to put 2 washers onto each screw like this. And then the 4 screws go through these larger holes on the steel backing plate, like this. Alrighty, so I'll set that down. And then the next thing we want to put in is these wooden dowels, which go in these smaller holes and help to guide all of the other parts as well. So just pop those in. Then I take this PTFE insulator and that goes on next. So I'm going to align the wooden dowel with the little holes on the piece of PTFE like this. And then it will slide down. The next part we use is the steel flag, which is how we connect to the potentiostat. So that only goes through these smaller holes, not through these screws as well. The next part is the current collector with the flow field. So that's what this looks like. And for the first one that I put on, I want it to be the flow field to be facing up towards me. Next, I'm going to put on this thin PTFE gasket. And then I'm going to take one of my carbon paper electrodes and set it over the flow field. This electrode should be big enough that it covers the flow field, but not so big that it doesn't fit within the opening of the gasket. Just like that. So the next thing I need to put on is my membrane. I have my Nafion membrane just soaking in water. I'm just going to pick it out of this jar. And I have 4 holes just poked in it, which I just did with a pair of scissors. And those 4 holes should line up with the dowels. And you want this membrane to extend. Got to make sure that the carbon paper electrode doesn't shift. And then you want this membrane to cover the full gasket. Alrighty. Next, I'm going to put on another gasket. Set that down, and then I'm going to put my second carbon paper electrode right in that hole again. Now I'm going to grab the other current collector with the flow field, and this time the flow field will go on facing down. So we always want the flow field to be touching the carbon paper electrode. Align. Sometimes getting it to align can be a little difficult. Then goes on another steel flag. And then a PTFE gasket or insulator. This now goes through the wooden dowels and the screws. And finally, the other steel backing plate on top. Then on top of each of these screws, we can screw on the bolt. I just hand tighten it first. Then I'm gonna tighten it with this torque wrench. For this specific flow cell, we need a torque of 30 inch-pounds. I'm gonna use the wrench on the bottom, and then I'm just gonna tighten it like so till it won't tighten anymore. And then you wanna tighten these in a diamond pattern. So now I'm going to go to the bolt that was diagonal of the one that I just tightened. Then we go to the other two diagonals. And once they're completely tightened, you will just set it up like this, and it's ready to go. So facing me is the working electrode side, and far away from me is the counter electrode side. And then on the left is where we will have our fluid inlet, and on the right is where we have our fluid outlet. And this screw on the top here is where the reference electrode can slide in if we're using a reference electrode. To disassemble, it's all of the same steps, just in the reverse order.